friends. So part of being able to access comfort on your board is having good habits, having things that you do with repetition, iteration, and improvement 1% every time. So something you can think about improving at all times is the ability to be primarily applying tension, pressure, power, however you like to think about it, through your forefoot, and maybe and secondary would be the midfoot, right? Primary application, oh my god, through your foot would be your forefoot, second midfoot, and then heel as a last resort, maybe even defensive mechanism we can think about it as. So for instance, if you slow down that 50, you're going to be able to see that when I get onto the board on the 50, I am not holding this grind with my heels, right? It's gonna be where my toes are inside the board and I'm applying very light pressure, but also on top of that, being engaged through the hips, a little bit of opening up to where I'm going and making sure that I'm centered over that lead foot. But today we're just thinking about, having agility in the sense where we can be light on our foot, we can access quick feet, and just improve overall board control. Part of, one way you can improve that if you feel like you're heavy on your heels or you just don't have good board control is just be a bit more intentional about how you're landing, how you're popping, and how you're landing. So your input and then the output, the result. So input, right, in a sense to the board will be this, right? Output, you can think of it as your land. How are you landing? What's the result? So if you're applying pressure through the heels with the ollie because you don't feel safe or strong enough to apply it through the forefoot, just know that you're gonna be building on top of bad habits and not really able to access efficiency even if you get super strong through that heel application. So what I want you to like I said, be intentional about is, are you landing on your forefeet, right? Or are you doing an ollie and then landing like this, or even a little less exaggerated, right? But where my heels are still kind of hanging off. You see, when I landed, my board was tilted closer towards the heel side. That's because in order to catch myself, I need to feel something. But if my toes can't feel anything, right, I'm either gonna go like that, toe drag, or I'm either going to catch myself with my heels. Catching yourself on the heels is not primarily what you want to happen. Of course, when a lot of us learn tricks like no slides, it's real easy to stay defensive and try to stay on the heel so that if we slip out, we're not fully committed to the toe side, right? And many of us, because we're not strong enough through the forefoot or applying tension through there, or relying on the stability, we just gravitate towards a defensive mechanism. But it doesn't mean it's something you want to be building on top of. It's a bad habit. It's not something you want to iterate on. What you want to iterate on is, let's say you land on a no slide with your toes barely touching the toe side. You want to even probably get a bit better about being here, right? So little by little, making sure you can get to the center, because this is going to give you the most leverage to do tricks out or even just nudge yourself out as efficiently as possible. Being efficient with this doesn't mean landing it the cleanest way possible, because a lot of skaters can get away with doing a no slide here and getting off clean, right? But it gets difficult when you want to do variations or flips out. So even if you don't want to get more technical, or you're satisfied on how you're doing certain tricks, you also want to think about how it's not allowing you to improve in a physical manner, right? Because even as we walk, what you should be feeling is that you're propelling yourself forward from your forefoot primarily. Yes, sure, your heel touches the ground, but it's not where you need to heel strike. I'm sure many of us have heard about how heel striking is not good. I'm pretty much talking about a very similar reason on why we don't want to be applying tension, pressure, or power through the heels. It's just not effective, and it doesn't help you in any way, physically, skateboarding wise, or style wise, anyway. And so some ways you can kind of take some step backs is, like I mentioned, doing ollies, right? Landing in that way. If you, for the life of it, of your session, you can't even get comfortable doing this, right? Ollie and making sure your feet are on inside the board. Just do this. Look, to play around with lifting your board and applying tension with tic tacs, right? Kick turns, back 180s, back 180 reverts. Even this, look, ollie. Just playing around with that. It's real easy to get super comfortable doing things like this. Oh my God, watch. Where your toes are hanging out, you turn, and you're on the heels. Don't build on top of those habits. So if you see yourself going on your heels to do kick turns, to drop in, to land, if you find that's a common pattern, the way you want to wire it out is by just doing the small things that are going to help your body adopt these habits, right? The habit of applying power, tension, or what was the other one I was using? Power, tension, or oh my God, anyways.
Iteration?
No. Applying power, tension, placement, foot placement. Point is, you want your forefoot to be in charge of getting that snap, of getting that pop out, of applying that stability. You know what I mean? So in other words, let's say we're trying to back tail. We don't want to have our heel primarily stabilizing us, right? It's not how would I say, it's not optimal, it's not efficient. So we want to slowly get comfortable, making sure we're stabilizing. Oh my God. Good thing I was holding on through the forefoot. So you can even think about, would it be easier to stay standing on one foot through your heel or through your toes? Both don't work independently of each other. They all work together, but for the most part, we're gonna be having our heels lifted from the ground or from whatever we're stabilizing it as we're doing things like jumping, running, landing on things. So point is, stay away from the heels so that you can allow your forefoot and midfoot to stabilize yourself, apply tension, power, pop, snap, nudge yourself out, and things of that nature. Another way you can just practice this is by doing your version of an easy trick. It doesn't mean that you can't choose something more difficult, but I want you to start with something simple. It can be an ollie up a curb. Something I like to do a lot was thinking about being as light as possible when I got onto a ledge, and then doing a trick off of that same ledge. So not only was I practicing the trick when I went off the ledge, but I was also iterating on being light and making sure that I was intentional about applying or by landing with my toes or my toes inside the board. Now this can be done wrong where you're trying to land in a tippy toe manner. I'm not saying to land in a tippy toe manner. What I'm saying is, do not have the heel on the board when you land, right? That's what we want to be very aware that we're not doing, right? Another thing, just trying to manual, right? You can, feet are on the ground, manual. You can play around like that, manual, not nose mani, right? You can do, even if you can't do switch manis for a long time, you can do this. Just lifting your board up, right? And same thing, going fakie, I guess. The point is, you want to build that habit of applying, having board control through the forefoot, right? This is going to help you. I think I mentioned it already, but with quick feet, with getting more technical, getting stronger, and feeling comfortable on your board. How much time do we have?
10.
10 minutes? Okay, so today the way I approach, getting a bit more, I think I'm using the right word, agile, is by just doing 50-50s with the intention to feel like I have the option to get on and then get off, right? Because that really and feeling comfortably, because I can do it where I get on, land with my heel on the board and then pop off, but it's not going to feel comfortable to the point where, let's say I want to do this on a ledge to drop, I won't feel as confident as if I were able to stay on the forefoot throughout the whole trick, right? From roll in to roll away. So that's why it's another reason why it's super important. It just prepares you to be as efficient as possible, so that when you take it to a more difficult obstacle, or try to challenge yourself in the street, you're so much more capable of it, instead of and you intuitively will feel more capable of it, instead of second guessing yourself, because inside that body, that awareness you have, intuitively you already know that if you're comfortable getting on the heels, you're not going to be able to lock in comfortably. It's going to be very intimidating, and in many cases it can work against you. It's not impossible. You're going to see you're going to see 50s and any trick with heavy on the heels, and maybe even good tricks, but that, I promise you, that's not the way they would have liked to land it, and they would have preferred to make sure they're on the 4 feet. Right here, if I go on the heels, I already want to slip out if I put heels. So just be super intentional about where you're applying that pressure, because little do you know, that's bleeding into every other trick you do on your skateboard. And if you're having trouble, trouble not being fast, you're getting fatigued, or you're not able to have tricks stick, this can be a big reason why. Because it's always taking you forever to get comfortable on the board, because you're landing on your heels, right? You get so used to that. You get heavy on the heels. There's a lot of other things that can apply, such as, if you've been sitting all the time, it's likely that your muscles aren't strong enough to keep them on the forefoot, so you're gonna go to the defensive stance, which is on the heels, because applying pressure on the forefoot means applying pressure on the tibs, and many other muscles that might be fatigued or so weak because you've been sitting down, for extended period of time, or not skateboarding for extended periods of time. So regardless of the reason, if you find yourself being heavy on the heels, you just want to make sure that you're doing your part and being intentional with iteration, which means improving little by little, and just feeling that ability to primarily apply or settle your weight over the forefoot. Having said that, that's what I wanted to talk about today. I thought this was a perfect ledge to kind of do a 50, to show that it doesn't matter how rounded something is. If you're applying your weight through your forefoot, or tension through the forefoot, it's going to be possible to do a 50-50, right? This is why skaters can do 50s on wide flat bars, small flat bars, and even on the crustiest of ledges, right? Of course, we need wax. Of course, it may not be done easy, but it can be done. And that's because of that ability to apply, that to reinforce that stability through the forefoot, right? Having said that, hope you enjoyed the video. Let me know what else you would want to see in the comments, elaboration, questions. Appreciate everyone leaving comments on the videos. I am gonna look through them, so they will be seen, and I do appreciate it greatly. This video actually came about through a one-on-one that I had, when was it? Sunday? Yeah, Sunday. So having said that, I do offer one-on-ones on video. I offer it at the skate park, but if you're interested so if you're interested in those lesson sessions or coaching, hit me up at profe.carlos on Instagram, and we can talk about what that would look like for you. Otherwise, hope you have a great day, and see you in the next one. Peace out.